All right, guys, welcome to another day of World Civilizations. So today we're going to be looking at Asia, essentially. So we're calling it the Asian Rim because a lot of the countries that we're looking at are like along the boundaries of like the Pacific tectonic plate, which is like the edge of Asia, the rim of Asia, like Eastern Asia. Um, and a lot of the stuff that we're looking at with this is driving past. A lot of the stuff that we're looking at is stuff that's going on once again during the Cold War. But a lot of it has a lot of impact on how this part of the world looks today. So our essential questions today are: number one, how was Japan transformed after World War II? Number two, what changes did the Asian Rim countries experience after World War II? What are the Asian tigers? And why does mainland China's claim to Taiwan threaten Taiwan's economic future? So, first, transformation of Japan. So we're going to look at Japan first. So from 1945 to 1952, Japan was controlled and governed by Allied military forces. That included the United States, right? So we're looking at, right, World War II, right? Japan and Germany lose, right? And so now we have all these other forces that are in charge of these areas. So Japan's society will actually be remodeled along Western lines. Part of that is they wanted like their society to be like less aggressive, but also look more like, Europe and look more like the Americas, right? So Japan's new, they took Japan and they changed a lot of things about society, but they also changed the government, which is actually a huge part of society. Like the system of government that you have really is, it plays into a lot of different things about your culture and your economy. So they, right, got a new constitution, they got a new government, and in this constitution, it renounced war as a national policy, saying that like they would never go to war or support war. It established universal suffrage, which means that everyone got a vote in their country once you're a certain age. And then balanced power among government branches. So the balanced power among government branches would be more like how in our system we have checks and balances between the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, right? That's, balance. It's supposed to be balanced power. The Liberal Democrats was the political party that dominated politics as well. Japan's economy. So, although Allied officials had minimal success dismantling Zaibatsu business conglomerations during the occupation, their land reform program was more successful. Zaibatsus are companies that have vertical integration, meaning like everything from like the raw materials to the retail stores, like every aspect of those products being made was owned by the same company. So I don't know, you might recognize some of these notable Zaibatsus like Mitsubishi, which they make like cars and stuff, right? So they were Zaibatsu. So every element of like the production of those goods was owned by the company, and the retail, all that. Japan became a model of economic success for a variety of reasons. One was the culture of cooperation, right, working together, a skilled labor force, right, modern factories, and rewards for innovation, right. So one of the reasons why Japan did so well, in World War II was because of their skilled labor force and their factories, which let them pump out, right, new innovations, lots of bombs, lots of goods in a short amount of time. And so, right, that's gonna be really influential after World War II, right? They're gonna switch it over to factories of commercial goods. This is a map that shows some of the major industries in the Asian Rim. So we're looking at Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan in this specific map. But we see different areas with chemicals and pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals are like medicine, right? Textiles is like clothing. The little squares are consumer goods, which, consumer goods is everything from cars to televisions. Electronics will be a bigger thing. Heavy engineering. We'll see oil refineries, lots of shipbuilding, vehicle manufacturing, machinery, right, and so on. Society and culture in Japan. So the occupation government attempted to eliminate Japanese aggressiveness, but a lot of traditional characteristics still remain. What that's saying is, so the occupation government is those allied forces, that are occupying Japan right after World War II. But a lot of traditional Japanese things persevered through that time. And during that time, right, in the late 40s, early 50s, women gained political rights, like they could vote. But in like society for a little while, they were still seen as subordinate or like a kind of like a lower class in some ways. So it's a primary source. I considered having this being part of like an assignment, but then I decided against it. But this is A Wild Sheep Chase. Haruki Murakami. So he was born January 12th, 1949. He's one of modern Japan's most influential and popular authors. His work, not just as a writer, but also as a noted translator, helps bridge the gap between Japanese and Western literature. In his 1982 novel, A Wild Sheep Chase, the main character searches for a supernatural sheep that possesses the bodies of various people and uses them to shape Japanese society. In this excerpt, the right-hand man of a powerful crime boss explains what they accomplished when the crime boss was controlled for decades by the sheep. We built a kingdom, a powerful underground kingdom. We pulled everything into the picture: politics, finance, mass communications, the bureaucracy, culture, all sorts of things you would never dream of. We even subsumed elements that were hostile to us, from the establishment to the anti-establishment, everything. Very few, if any of them, even noticed they had been co-opted, all of which the boss built single-handedly after the war. It is as if the boss commandeered the whole of a giant ship of state. If he pulls out the plug, the ship goes down, passengers and all lost at sea, and surely before anyone becomes aware of that fact. But I don't know. Haruki Murakami, I mean, he wrote lots of books, Kafka on the Shore, lots of stuff, but really influential author. And his books, they're in both English and Japanese. You can go to, well, not right now, but if you guys go to like Barnes and Noble or really like any bookstore, you'd be able to like find a book by him. Next we're talking about the Asian tigers. So thoughts, right? So think about this. So what image does the expression Asian tigers bring to mind? Like, what do you think of when you hear Asian tigers? Like, think about it for a second. Oh, really? Just kidding. I'm like, Dora the Explorer, right? It's like, I just talked to you and you don't respond, but whatever. So Asian tigers. I mean, for me, I think of like this picture, right? I love how one of them is a tiger and one of them's not. It's like a leopard of some sort. But I think of like, big cats and stuff. But that's not what they are. So Asian tigers is a figure of speech. It implies that the regions are fierce, proud, and powerful. These are small parts of Asia, but have vigorous and growing businesses and industries. So the Asian tigers still are known as Asian tigers today. So they're really small, like islands or pieces of land that have become huge in business and industry. So South Korea, great example. And we'll be looking at all of these, but South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, they're all going to imitate Japan and kind of follow their economic process. With Singapore and Hong Kong, they were British colonies for quite a while, and so there's like a lot of British influence and trade with Great Britain. That's going to be a huge influence on them, but I mean, huge for growing businesses and industries. If you think about South Korea, I mean, there are so many brands that you guys know and interact with every day that, you know, they're invented or they're made, you know, in South Korea. For example, my phone is a Samsung, right? Samsung's a South Korean company, right? Because they're one of those Asian tigers. So let's look at South Korea first. So they had a dictator. He was a dictator, also, you know, their president. Syngman Rhee. He was forced to retire in 1960. Park Chung-hee I could be saying this wrong, was elected president and began to strengthen the South Korean economy. South Korea gradually emerged as a major industrial power in East Asia. So pretty much they had a dictatorship for a while until like 1960, but then all of a sudden they had an election. It goes a little bit more democratic, like a democracy, and their economy, right, starts to grow as like a result of some of those like government freedoms. Actually, I want to talk about this maybe a little bit more. Anyway, so they're an industrial power still today, right? I mean, Seoul, South Korea, like I said, I mean, there's so many things. It's really interesting if you like Google search like South Korean companies, you know, you'll have a big list of things that we use all the time. Yeah. Singapore, after becoming an independent state, and in this case, state means like country. So when they become an independent country, Singapore will emerge as one of the most advanced economies in Southeast Asia. Singapore, the main island of Singapore that Singapore's on, it actually only takes like an hour to drive across. It's really small. It's a former British colony. They were under authoritarian rule for a really long time. And right, authoritarian is where the government has a lot of say in like the daily lives of people, right? But so their authoritarian rule create a lot of stability, right? And then on top of that stability, they're able to develop a free market economy. So even though at first it's like, oh, that authoritarian rule is something that we saw with like the USSR, right? Like Russia. Instead of a communist system, they'll go for a capitalist system with a free market. We're going to see lots of things in Singapore with banking, shipbuilding, oil refineries, and electronics. Lots of big companies are like headquartered there. So it's a great place as far as like location goes for trade. In more recent years, citizens have been demanding greater political freedom. Because they have this economic freedom, that doesn't always mean that you have lots of political freedom. So there's been lots of stuff with that. Singapore, this is a quote from the textbook, the McGraw-Hill one. Says, Singapore, once one of the great trading centers of the British Empire, has experienced remarkable economic growth and diversification since 1960. Singapore has the most advanced economy in Southeast Asia, but has never been primarily dependent on the production and export of commodities. Economic development has been highly dependent on investment capital from foreign multinational corporations. This was accompanied by a strong commitment to education and health. Labor shortages and rising wages have pushed the economy toward higher value, added products such as electronics, precision equipment, and oil refining. Singapore's financial services are highly sophisticated and with one of the world's busiest ports in terms of shipping tonnage. The country continues to perform its traditional function as a financial intermediary, transshipping raw materials from Southeast Asian region in exchange for finished goods from both within and especially outside the region. So what this is saying is essentially Singapore has become and it's just a trade hub, right? People are bringing in raw materials, and then Singapore takes those raw materials and ships them to other parts of the world. And then Singapore also takes in finished goods and ships those out to other parts of the world, right? So it's this trading center. Hong Kong is a lot like Singapore. Hong Kong became an economic powerhouse, especially under Great Britain. In the 1980s, Great Britain agreed to return control of the city to mainland China in 1997. In turn, China promised that Hong Kong would enjoy a high degree of economic freedom for the next 50 years. So this is really interesting. Your assignment's going to be with some of the stuff with Hong Kong. So Great Britain and China, like mainland China, fought in these wars called the Opium Wars. It was partly because Great Britain was selling drugs to lots of people in China, lots of opium. Anyway, they had this big war, the Opium Wars, and as part of the treaty to end the wars, China gave Great Britain Hong Kong for 99 years, right, is what the contract said. It actually ended up being more than that, but right, China was like, hey, we only gave it to you for 99 years, and they're like, okay, we'll give it back to you in 1997, and they did. And part of that, right, so China agreed that Hong Kong would have economic freedom. So even though mainland China is under like a more modern day, it's like less so, but in the 1980s, it was under a more like communist kind of economy. They're like, Hong Kong can keep its more capitalist form of economy, but obviously there's been issues with some of the stuff with that. Once again, this is from the textbook. It says, under Hong Kong's unique status as an international free port, entrepot trade, which is transshipping, which is international shipping, mainly with China, flourished until 1951, when the United Nations placed an embargo on trade with China and North Korea. Hong Kong responded with the establishment of competitive light industry and a transformation of the economy in the early 1960s. The market economy and laissez-faire policy of the British colonial government enabled further industrialization along with foreign investment and financial transactions. In succeeding years, entrepot trade rapidly revived, while trade between Hong Kong and China surged. Hong Kong also developed as a regional financial center, as an agent in China's pursuit of modernization. High-tech industries such as electronics were developed, and the property and financial markets prospered until early 1973, when the stock market collapsed as billions of dollars were drained out of Hong Kong. This next one, Taiwan. So Hong Kong currently is part of China, like mainland China. Taiwan's the same, right? Mainland China claims it as their own, and there's so much crazy stuff that goes on with it. But we're looking like Cold War time. Okay, so Cold War time, Taiwan had an authoritarian government, which was ruled by refugees from mainland China. Some of these refugees claimed that they were the rightful heirs to the mainland China like throne. There's all sorts of stuff with that. Taiwan at first was protected by the United States military, so they didn't have to create their own army or military, which meant that they were able to focus more on economic growth. So as the United States is having an army and stuff, they didn't have to spend so much on the military. They had a land reform, and they had lots of food production doubling, right? So they're making a lot more food. They expanded manufacturing and commerce. So lots of businesses just growing all over the place. The death of their leader, Chiang Kai-shek, in 1975 led to the government slowly becoming more democratic over time. But that's complicated because it's like, oh, they're getting more democratic. Cool. But they're also kind of part of, they're supposed to be like under like mainland China. It's crazy. So let's see if I can explain this better. So how does the history of Taiwan's relations with mainland China contribute to its uncertain future. So, Chiang Kai-shek is defeated by Chinese communists, right? Chiang establishes the Republic of China on Taiwan. So we have this guy who he loses out in China to communists, goes to Taiwan, establishes the government known as the Republic of China on the island of Taiwan. The Taiwan government claims legitimate rule over all of China, so Chiang is like, hey, I should be the ruler over all of China, even though they didn't like him. Communist government on mainland China claims rule over all of China, including Taiwan. So they're just like, no, Taiwan's still part of all of China, but Taiwan says, no, we're the Republic of China, we're different. And during the Cold War, there was lots of stuff with the United States protecting Taiwan from invasion by mainland China because Taiwan's Republic of China government was more democratic and not communist, right? And that whole, a lot of the lessons, right, this unit are all about like, oh, why are we doing stuff with the Korean War or the Vietnam War or doing these things? It's because we didn't want other countries to become communist, right? And so all of a sudden we're protecting Taiwan because, oh, look, they're less communist than the rest of China, but the rest of China says that they're part of them, and all that fun stuff. Taiwan's post-war development, so after World War II, right? Chiang Kai-shek used foreign aid and efforts of the people to build a modern industrialized society. Major issue for Taiwan is independence versus unification with mainland China, which mainland China already considers Taiwan part of its territory. There's more modern agreements that say that the United States cannot send diplomats or high-ranking government officials to Taiwan. We can only send diplomats and stuff to mainland China and Beijing. And same goes, Taiwan cannot send diplomats to the United States. And stuff like that. Anyway, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, or some of the more modern things with the riots in Hong Kong and stuff like that, definitely look up more stuff about Taiwan, because it's pretty fascinating, because they act like they're not part of China, but they're also part of China. But it's just this really weird thing. There's also interesting things if you're ever looking to, if you look at different airports on travel websites and stuff. So they used to say oh yeah, when it says oh, I'm flying to the Charles de Gaulle airport in Paris, France, right? It says Paris, it says France, right? But if you fly into an airport in Taiwan, so it used to say Taiwan, but now it doesn't, right? But a lot of them just don't say anything. It doesn't say China, it doesn't say Taiwan, because they don't want to seem like they're taking sides as a company. But anyway, so your assignment today, so you're going to watch a video about the British rule in Hong Kong and kind of the cultural impacts that it had. So you're going to learn little bit about that, and then answer a couple questions. There's one true or false, couple multiple choice, couple short answer, I think. But if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Next time is going to be a test, so please make sure that you look at those essential questions, that you look through your notes, or that you click on modules and go back and look at all the slides from this unit. I also put a thing on the homepage that links to a video that will... The color's doing weird things. Anyway, it'll show you how to find missing work. If you have questions about that still, please reach out to me. More than happy to help. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Enjoy some sunshine this week, and yeah, see ya.